Hello, friends. My name is Steve, and we're here today to talk all things Sons of Darkness with author Gourav Mohanty, and of course, our friend Mihir from Fantasy Book Critic. And just a heads up, we will be getting into full spoilers because we had a page to an episode a few weeks ago that we did the non spoiler discussion. So if you are here for non spoilers, there's a couple of hours full of talk about this book and lots of other fun topics. So go check that out. This one will be full spoilers. So just a heads up. So Mihir, will you start us off with an introduction, please?
Yes, sir. Hi, everyone. My name is Mihir Wanchu. I am a member of Fantasy Book Critic. I review books, interview authors, and I get to hang out with cool people like Steve and Gaurav here. I have been a reviewer for quite a while now, and it was earlier this year that I got introduced to this lovely, lovely debut book called Sons of Darkness by this fantastic Indian author called Gourav Mohanty, and you can see how beautiful the cover is. He happened to had emailed me stating that hey, I'm there's this book I've written, and it focuses on this Indian epic of Mahabharat. And for me, as an Indian and as a fantasy reader, this was the holy grail. Like, I haven't seen any author write such a book at all. Like, people have referenced it, people have written about it, but they have not combined it in such a way. So this all culminated in me reading this, and here we are.
Awesome.
So, hi everyone. If Mihir is the fairy godfather, then I'm a Cinderella. So, my name is Gaurav Mohanty. I'm the author of Sons of Darkness. I'm basically a fantasy fanboy who had his dream of writing a world based in Indian mythology come true. So, by profession, I'm a lawyer who also gallivants as a stand up comic from time to time. All of these skills really helping me kind of bring out this book. So, I'm really grateful to Steve for having me here. And I'm excited to discuss spoilers about Sons of Darkness because, it's such a thin line to toe when you're not getting into spoilers and just skirting the rim. So I'm glad that we can have a conversation without any diplomatic incident.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you both for being here. And it's hard because we're all over the world, so it's great to get together and to have this discussion. And before we get started on the spoiler discussion, Guru, there's been a change in just in case someone's looking for the book, either before or after this discussion. You recently had a change in publishing. What can you tell us about that?
So my book was published by an Indian mid press called Leadstar, and it was published in June. And I'm always going to be grateful to them for giving the book a platform to be launched. But I guess to use some metaphor, I don't know. I think it became a relationship between Tywin Lannister and Tyrion Lannister, where things kind of grew a little difficult, even though despite all the opportunities. And then I guess at some point in time, I had to go for the crossbolt in the belly of sorts. So right now I'm roaming around homeless in Essos, hoping for some Daenerys Targaryen to pick Sons of Darkness up again. But yes, at the moment, Sons of Darkness is not available on Amazon or any other platform, and I'm hoping that come the next year that changes. So, yeah.
Awesome. And so, getting into the book, the first thing that struck me, and I wasn't expecting, is that it's funny. There's a lot of funny dialogue in it. There's lots of funny and I think a book like this needs a little bit of humor here and there. But I was impressed with how funny it was, and the timing of it was really done well.
Thank you so much, Steve. I think all the stand-up comedy plus PG Woodhouse and Terry Pratchett reading kind of really got into it. And I think when you're writing grimdark, that sort of dry humor kind of helps layer it. Softens the blow, if I can say that. And I'm glad that the punchlines landed, so to speak. I did pepper in a few what we call PJs or poor jokes.
Mhm.
Uh, so just to cater to every kind of joke audience that might be there, and I'm just happy that it connected with the readers. So, yeah.
Gaurav, but when you're writing these, these humorous scenes, because it's not a full blown humorous scene. There's lines which are mixed in. Like, because I know there's this one serious scene between Krishna and Draupadi, right after the Swayamvar. In the book we read what a chaotic mess the Swayamvar is, how Draupadi is feeling emotionally and physically, I don't want to say assaulted, but it's blown away, so as to speak, because she did not expect anything like that happening.
Mhm.
And then there's that joke about the bad and moo, and so how did you manage to get that sort of level of humor in after such a scene? Or did you decide okay, this scene needs such sort of humor and this scene needs a little bit more clever style? What was your thoughts, and how did you go about that?
I think I just added a bit of myself into the book there, because when there are stressful situations, or like let's say when I had when I was a kid and I used to ride a cycle and I used to have a fall, my response to pain always used to be a laugh. And I
Mhm.
think that was my coping mechanism. And I just felt that Krishna, in that sense, diffuses heavy situations using a lot of humor. And that helps him get all his plot moves and allows people to follow what he wants, because he layers all his plans with a touch of humor. And that's something which I really enjoyed, uh, adding that bit to Krishna's character. No matter whatever he's trying to do, he
Mhm.
layers it with a silken glove of humor, so that nobody can feel that iron fist inside the glove. And I
Mhm.
think that's something which I had a blast doing with Krishna, at least. Yeah, for sure.
All
In
right.
fact, actually, sorry to add to that, with Krishna, the story is that he was a cowherd before,
Mhm.
who was a rags to riches kind of a story, where he's like a cowherd who becomes a prince, and kind of almost rules Mathura from behind the screens. So I made sure that almost all his humor is cattle or dairy related. Uh, so that's something I was very specific about, that his humor needs to be grounded from his roots.
Mhm.
So I think that's something which I took special care. So yeah, that's definitely
See, I didn't even realize that. Now I'm gonna have to reread the book and again try to pick up on it. That's so funny.
there. Yeah,
That,
so that was
um, Steve, is it okay if I ask him a question and then maybe you can jump in
Yeah,
as well?
of course. Yeah, go ahead.
So, Gaurav, again, this book is written like for an audience all over the world. I feel like people who understand or know the epic of Mahabharat, the original Indian epic of Mahabharat, will have a slight advantage for people who perhaps don't know it. Also,
Mhm.
for all our viewers going forward, in this interview, we're just going to refer to Mahabharat as MBH, just because it's short and quick. So please don't get offended, or please don't be worried. It's Mahabharat and MBH is the same thing. What I wanted to ask was, when I was reading through it, I quickly understood when there's references to Krishna's back, the background, like,
Mhm.
because when we meet Krishna, he's already a part and parcel of Mathura. He's
Right.
a player. He controls everything. You have small bits and pieces here and there about talking about how he came to be. Same
Mhm.
thing goes for Eklavya. Now, Eklavya is a very enigmatic character. We barely know anything about him, and we just get small, tiny hints about who he might be. Again, a reader like me might definitely knows the backstory about it.
Mhm.
Same thing goes for Karna as well, because you again have small reference to Karna's, background of whom he got taught by and all of
Mhm.
that. So, have you ever thought in the future to maybe, or maybe when you were originally writing this book, because I know you had talked about this as well, that your book was condensed. Did these include their background stories and then they had to be cut away, or do you plan to write them later on, just as like maybe small short stories or novellas to add for other readers?
I mean, the sky is the limit. So, I mean, when it comes to novellas, I'm sure there are a lot of ideas there, but I was very particular about writing the book as if someone who has never even heard the Mahabharata can read and immerse himself in our Vedic lore.
Hmm.
And I've always believed in the iceberg method, where you just show the tip of the peak, and the foundations are all hidden under the sea. And I think that makes a character a lot more enigmatic.
Hmm.
Yes, Indian readers, when they read Sons of Darkness, they immediately connect because they know the mountain that hides behind the sea. And that's why they love how the mountain's color has changed, to put it in a metaphor.
Hmm.
But that does not take away, I feel, in my opinion, the advantage of coming to Sons of Darkness without having any knowledge of Mahabharata previously. For example, let's take Eklavya. Eklavya's example. A lot of reviewers have loved him as this cute little psychopath, without having any knowledge of what he was in the past in the original epic.
Hmm.
And I think that's somewhere which I'm grateful and glad to the muses that I somewhat succeeded, because it was there in the back of my head that I don't want this to be a book for which you need to do some pre-reading.
Hmm.
Of course, it amplifies your experience for sure.
Hmm.
But it's like a scuba diving thing where you're just going with your floaters and you're going to have a blast, even though you do not know the name of the fishes. So something on those lines. And I was really happy that, and I think even going forward, sure there will be, I will try and create a spider network from where they can pick up on the threads of the character's history,
Hmm.
but not like I won't info dump the past. Let me put it that way. That's something which I don't want to do. From whatever I've read, I enjoy the fact that it leaves a lot of vacuum where the readers can play their own theories on what the characters are. And eventually, I think after completion of the entire series, at least the first book series, I hope that the readers know exactly where they're coming from and what is the past and what is the future, without me really going and setting out their entire anthology of how they have come from the beginning. So yeah, that's that.
Awesome. And you just said first book series. So I hope that means that there's going to be a second, maybe a third, maybe more stories set in this world as well once this arc ends of this saga.
Yeah, I mean, those who have read the Mahabharata, me here being one of them, knows that the gems that I have to explore and slash exploit are just so many. It's an entire minefield that I can take, and there are so many ideas in my head to do that. But it all depends on how the first series plans. Plans can be grand, but it all depends on how I plant the seeds.
Mhm.
So I'm having a great time for the first series. It's all chalked out in my head, but and with ideas of spin-offs and sequels and prequels. But yeah, let's we conquer the first peak and then we'll get to the Everest. So yeah.
Nice.
Yes. And you did mention a minefield. How is it writing this story when you're referencing that other text? Is it are there certain things that you were nervous about changing or altering a little bit?
Oh yeah, most definitely. I wanted to change, so I know there was no going back from it because I did want to present a unique, fresh reading experience. I think I mentioned that in my author's note very categorically, that the world which has been created by the original writer Vyas, of course, it has been added over the centuries by different people in different states. It's already beautiful and huge, and it's an epic poem in its own right. So if you want that, definitely go and read it, because I don't want to again rehash it and just present it in a modern context. I wanted to play God and make my own world. Um, that being said, I was careful. What I really wanted was to get the geography right. That's something which I was very particular about. So I really deep dived into ancient maps, Indian maps, with Greek traders coming in and creating this entire thing. And so yeah, so there's a website called incarnate.com where you can create D&D maps, and I think that's where I spent a lot of hours creating this map, trying to make it as accurate as possible, figuring out how to create the rivers, and I had a lot of blast doing it, and I'm glad that I somewhat landed right, at least for the first book. In the second book, we kind of head to the northeast, in current northeast India, the eastern section, and that's going to be a lot more difficult to draw. But I'm really looking forward to that challenge. So yeah.
So would it be fair to say, like, similar to your hero George R. R. Martin? Because I remember in the first book of Game of Thrones, there was one simple map of Westeros. The north was there, the south was there, but there was just one simple map. But as the books progressed, we started seeing more and more, like a little bit more of the north, the wall, Essos, and everything. So does this mean that we'll perhaps get to view the wider world around this continent of Aryabrat?
Absolutely. Like the second book expands eastwards to the northeast India and the East
Mm-hmm.
India. And even culturally speaking, this is something very separate from the book. Currently in India, northeast India, the northeast part of India, is not very widely represented in our commercial books, themes, Bollywood movies, you can name it. So I'm also taking this opportunity to really deep dive into their cuisine, their ancient culture, because they used to be a very huge empire in our mythology. So I'm looking forward to shed light on the northeast part of India. And similarly, in the third book, we'll be heading west. So, Steve, what happened in the past was India was actually huge, considered a huge subcontinent by the Greek traders or the Europeans. So basically, Afghanistan, Baghdad, all of those places were very intrinsic part of the Indian kingdoms then. Some of our greatest universities, called Takshashila, was there on a northwest frontier, which is now no longer a part of India, but is in Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really looking forward to deep dive there and create that part of the world in the third book. So geographically speaking, we are going to like expand east and west and hopefully south by the end of the book.
And if I'm not wrong, there's also a reference to Princess Chitrankara in the Sons of Darkness, and she, in the original epic of MBH, has something to do with Arjun.
Right.
Maybe
Yeah.
that'll happen. Maybe that won't happen.
I mean, she does. If I can just say one thing, she does feature in the second book,
Mm-hmm.
and and just to like give a flavor to Steve, Chitrangada is this princess in Mahabharata. I won't go into too much details, but she belongs to a kingdom which follows the matrilineal system of succession. That is, it flows through the mother's side, and that was very unique in our patriarchal society of then. So, and I love feminist characters because that's something I felt that while we have amazing warrior goddesses in Hindu mythology, we don't have that many that much supply of warrior women when it comes to Indian mythology. So that's something which I'm really looking forward to. Like whenever I get even a trace in my research of any woman who's picked up a sword or a bow, I decide to just like have a blast with it. So that's something I'm really looking forward to.
Nice. And Ankit had a comment. Truly, the way this book has been written, it's fabulous, dark, and amazing. MBH has never been represented so well in the true dark manner, the way it should be.
Thank you so much, Ankit.
And good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. Love the book and the author. And our friend John is here, about
hey,
to go
John.
to sleep. Yeah, he's up late. Our friend Paramita is here, and of course Aaron is here.
Yeah.
And Gourav puts it well here. The simple references to the incidents of MBH as an alternate reality adds to the reading experience. Simply make sure people talk about Roeg and Rita even more.
Thank you, Tej.
I do have a question from Paramita, a related question for Mr. Mohanty. Would you please share your views on retelling versus reimagining a famous literary work?
Sure. I think retelling, for example, there's a very famous book called Palace of Illusions that retells the Mahabharata from Draupadi's perspective. What it does is the original epic is, I don't know if you guys have read Fire and Blood by George R.R. Martin. It looks like an encyclopedia of the lineage and kind of accounting from a Grand Master's point of view. Mahabharata is somewhat written like that. It's more like a setting out of events that have happened in a beautiful manner. You don't have character monologues or inner thoughts that come in the Mahabharata. So what was done in that retelling was the entire book was told from the perspective of Draupadi. The events were not changed, however. The same events, but from a different islands. I think that's where reimagining comes into picture where, or even Song of Achilles is actually a good example of a retelling where she reimagines Troy from the perspective of Patroclus, who was Achilles' friend / lover / cousin, depending on the perspective you're going for. And what I have tried to do is, put Sons of Darkness in an alternate universe. The whole concept of Marvel Cinematic Universe, I think, comes into picture here, where one tiny thing changes and how it can create a ripple effect making the characters act differently. My views on both of them are, totally go for it. I think the world of literature is huge. That people who have read the same characters, beloved characters, would love to reimagine them in a different world where something else happens. Something surprising. I think that kind of adds that kind of brings in nostalgia value as well of an ancient epic, along with, I guess, the shock value. The shock is too crude a word, but the nostalgia plus shock value, I think, kind of becomes a reimagining. That's what I think. So I'm really in for that.
Also, the book which he mentioned, The Palace of Illusions, it's more of a literary story. Like, and I remember reading that when it came out in 2007, 2008 by Chitra Banerjee Devakaruni. It's very beautifully written, and like he mentioned, it's from the viewpoint of Draupadi, who's called Panchali, because she was a princess of the kingdom of Panchal. Again, reference in Sons of Darkness as well, and it's very nice. But if you know the Mahabharata, you can easily predict. She does some small changes, of course, rightfully so, because the story is only told from Draupadi, and Draupadi wasn't present in the war. But yet we as the readers get to see the war over there as well. So it's kind of fun and interesting. Gaurav, Steve, is it okay if I ask him a question?
Of course, yeah. Go ahead.
With your book, the prologue is set in a time which is 10,000 years ago before the actual events of the book. And then you have, because it's a multi-POV story, you have different characters in different regions, different places as well. And then you have these interludes where two separate characters, one is Masha, one is Nala or Nala, who feature. Can you tell us the timeline? Because it's not really clear set. until the
Yeah.
very end as to where
Right.
everyone is and what is exactly happening.
Yeah.
Can you, for maybe just again, for some of us who have gotten it, some of us who done, mainly me, who
Yeah.
hasn't quite understood, like, what the timeline is.
Yeah.
Can you
Yeah.
perhaps reveal what the timeline is of each of the characters when they begin and
Sure.
when they end?
Yeah, definitely. I think before that, I'll just give why Masha and Nala are so important to the story is because Masha was my narrating device, someone who kind of holds the story together by recounting it and breaking the story into parts. So that because Mahabharata has a lot of characters, Sons of Darkness has a lot of characters. So just to kind of rein them in, I think Masha was important from that point of view. And Nala was my eye to the world building and the magic system, just giving a little bit of taste from the other side and a way to bring about my Vedic Hogwarts fantasy, of sorts. So that was something. But talking about the timeline, what starts with Muchukun is, of course, 10,000 years back. And then you have Masha, who's reading the journals of different, written by different oracles on the different characters. So you have Krishna and Shishupal who go in the same time, and then you have Karna and I think that was Mati. Yeah, Karna and Bhanumati who go in together. I think all of them converge at the Swayamvar, and
Hmm.
Masha is still reading about this. Uh,
Okay.
yeah, so it's only after the Swayamvar that Masha comes into real time with the events that are flowing in Sons of Darkness, because Masha finds out who the potential son of darkness is and where he might rise,
Hmm.
and then she has a meeting with her superiors, and she decides like, hey, I've uncovered this,
Hmm.
and then she's assigned to travel with Parshuram and Nala. I
Hmm.
think that's where the timelines all converge, and after that event is the Battle of Mathura that like, takes place. That's in the future.
That's in the future. So how far in the past are these events from when Marsha is reading about them?
A year.
A year back. Okay, so it's
Yeah.
not okay.
Yeah.
If given the chance, let's say you're now searching for a new publisher. If given the
Yeah.
chance, because when you wrote this book, I believe it is of 206,000 k words,
Hmm.
or a little bit around that. Would you expand that?
Yeah.
And if you do, what would you add? Because I'm
Oh,
pretty sure you must have cut some things, from this book to make it that specific time, that
Yeah.
word count. So
That's an amazing question.
that's a great question.
So,
he's gonna hate me after this interview. He's like, "No more me here. No more me here."
no, I love this question actually because I would love to add stuff because there were so many things that chopped off. But now, when the book has been received so well, it's like a delicate crystal that I'm scared of touching, which might break.
Mhm.
But if I could add a small scene, I think I had discussed this with Mihir before. Once the one scene that I had to cut. Steve, you've read the entire
Mhm.
book, I
Yeah.
think, right? So there's one particular scene where after Satyabhama is killed and there's a funeral,
Hmm.
Krishna's motive, any religious symbol or symbol that depicts him, is always with the flute. He loves playing the flute, and I did put a bit of that in the starting. What happens is he plays the flute, and there's a song that he plays before he smashes the flute and throws it in the fire, kind of symbolizing that how he's letting go of any kind of witty humor, peace sort of a thing, and just descending towards complete chaos and rage. And I loved writing that scene because it really showed Krishna's bond and the pain that he felt. But and I love the whole flute breaking scene. I think that was very symbolic, very cinematic for me, so as to speak. But I had to cut off that scene to just come within the word limit, and that's something I'd really love to bring back if allowed. But what I'm really most worried about is that I've been hearing tales that if I like once I do get a new, if and when I do get a new publisher, hope so, fingers crossed, is that they might insist that I change the cover. Okay, and that will break my heart because Sons of Darkness cover is beautiful. I think everyone speaks about it, and it's a lovely cover. But what happens is whenever publishers generally pick up self-published books, like I've seen all these examples where Book Talk has helped a
Mhm.
lot of authors and their books be turned into like a whole thing by big publishers, and they always insist on changing the cover and name if the name is not to their liking, or at least the cover, because they want to give their own branding. Now that I hope that we can find a way, out of this and get Sons
Mhm.
of Darkness in there. But let's see. I don't know. It,
I
I
mean,
mean, it can be. Yeah, sorry.
because I was going to say Josiah Bancroft managed to convince his publishers, Orbit publishers, to use his same artist and use the same style of cover. So if you look at his self-published, original self-published two books, they had the same covers. And then Orbit, thankfully, I don't know how he did it, but he did it. He managed to convince them, or his agent managed to convince the publishers, like, hey, look, these covers are working. They're quirky and they're good. I mean, yours is not quirky. Yours is just gorgeous and it's
Yeah.
Oh,
dark
that's
and
great.
beautiful and everything. Maybe you can convince them, like, hey, put this, if put this as a hardcover and then you want to go with a different cover for the trade paperback, then do that. So just something
Oh,
to think
thank
about.
you. That I did not know that. That's really helpful. I mean, this gives me a talking point to get through because, for example, and I don't mean to be mean because it's beautiful book. I prefer the self-published cover of Legends and Lattes
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
versus the other one because I really like the idea of those two characters. That was it added to the whole cuteness of it,
Mhm.
rather than the one which I think Thor ultimately added.
I thought
So
they
that's
used the same one. They just tweaked it a little bit, if I'm not wrong. Maybe.
no, they changed it completely. It is just
Hmm.
text now. It has no
Oh,
characters on the
oh,
cover.
they
Yeah,
changed it. Okay. Oh, I didn't
completely.
notice.
There's like not a single resemblance to the old one at all.
Yeah.
So and I mean that's nice too. Not to take anything away from the designer, but I think Legends and Lattes, the entire appeal is it's very cute and very cozy, and I think the cover really showed that. Yeah, but the other cover, I just feel that sends a different message than the tone of the book is. But again, that's my thought. I mean, if Travis is happy, who am I to say? But yeah, that's it. So I'm hoping that I get to have a conversation. First, let the book get picked up by some other publisher, and then hopefully, hopefully I can have a conversation about the cover. Yeah.
Yeah. Aaron had a question. The Silver Wolves were great characters. Any inspiration behind your warrior women?
Thank you so much, Erin. Silver Wolves, again, this was my whole agenda of getting women, female warriors into our lore. And inspiration definitely has to be like from all the books that I've read. The women of Malazan, especially, really drove these characters, the bridge burners, for example. Um, I really like the whole idea of soldiers having X-Men kind of names. So that's something which really stayed with me. And I think that stayed with me long before I even thought of Sons of Darkness. So the moment I started writing and I wanted something like that. And the other thing, what I really wanted to bring about was I know that the past of any society, it's not just the Indian society, any society in the world suffered from a lot of patriarchy. And in India, and everyone with their own unique problems. In India, the problem was about dowry system, and if you had a second or a third girl child, there used to be female infanticide. So I wanted to kind of use that to give them a voice where they turn into warriors, where pain is a theme that forges them, and they kind of join the Satyabhama squad of social rejects, so as to speak, and that's definitely one of my inspirations to go after it. Like have a sort of pseudo Amazonians, who are not. I don't want to make it too unrealistic that they're all great warriors. So that's why in the book they are just used for rescue. That's their task. Ultimately, of course, they pull off a great feat by sheer means of rage and revenge. But initially, their entire task was to help civilians out, and and the same civilians who, by the way, they would have hated because they would remind them of their parents who had discarded them. So I loved bringing that whole thing together. So yeah, and then killing them was one of the great, like, was really really tough. Like, it was horrid. So yeah.
Pain is such a important theme of your book, like especially all the POV characters, except maybe say the prologue POV character, but even then he feels some sort of pain. But like especially all the once the book is introduced, pain is a vital part of their journey. Be it
Mhm.
Karna, from the emotional
Yeah.
pain that he feels of his class, to maybe say Masha, who has literally been hurt all over, to Nala, based on what happens to her in the book, and everybody else, Krishna as well, Satyabhama. Well, she's not a POV character, but maybe a little bit. All of them have felt pain. Shishupal maybe is a little bit to a lesser degree. He hasn't felt the physical pain, but he still feels emotionally stunted because of what happened in his past. In the future, or because pain was such a common theme throughout this book, in the future sequels, do you think there will be a characters who will continue this theme of pain, or will there be other themes, and will there be other characters introduced with those themes?
I do intend to bring other themes in, but I feel that in any kind of motivation, take it any hero's journey. I mean, at least of the modern kind, uh, pain in one version or the other is always there, because for example, if you take any character of Sons of Darkness, they start from a world of pain and they're heading somewhere. Krishna, on the other hand, was having a gala time. you know his all plans were working out and everything was working to his, I always call him my Dumbledore character, that being the smartest person in the room, the mistakes that he made tend to have greater consequences. So he was so sure of himself, but his entire world ends in a lot of pain. Unlike Shakuni, again from a world of pain, but he gets his job done. Shishupal manages to escape, so on and so forth. But Krishna, who's had a happy going all so far, his plan with Swayamvar worked out, Draupadi married whoever he wanted to, but it's like his entire world comes crashing down. Yet I think I was very deliberate and I really wanted the last line of the book to be Krishna saying I won, so that anyone who read that felt that, did you really? It was such a pyrrhic victory. Like, you've lost everything else. You've lost your city, you've lost your soldiers, you don't know where you are and stuff like that. So I think that was something which really drove me. And then in the second book, I can only speak of the second book because I'm writing it right now. Pain does feature in of sorts, but I think it will go towards a more traditional hero telling, sort of a hero's journey sort of a thing. But since I do delve in the arena of grimdark, I'm afraid that pain is something I just can't let go of. It's permanently going to be tattooed across my books. So all I can hope is that I just deliver it right. So yeah, that it causes enough pain to my readers as well.
Yeah.
Oh, it does. It does. I mean, I can only speak for myself.
A number of messages I get on Instagram that, dude, I don't know why did you have to kill Satyabhama? I did not. I thought she was going to win. Blah blah blah.
Yep.
It was just,
the whole woman chanting at the end. That that was a clever twist which you did. I was like, oh yeah, this is how the prophecy gets defeated.
Right. So the misdirection was.
It was perfect. It's like you learned from the master GRM really well.
I'm glad. Thank you. That's a huge honor. But yeah, I remember actually, just to give some anecdote from my life. But when I wrote that chapter, I was writing it on the train to a vacation in a place called Kashmir, Steve, which is a beautiful hill station, and it's just filled with valleys and flowers, and that's where Mihir is from. And it's just like, it's called God's paradise on earth. And we were sitting in the Taj, and we were by the pool, and my friend, I wrote the book, and we were chilling. Okay, it's a vacation. And I'm like, please, and she reads my chapters. And I was like, can you just read the scene? She's like, okay, sure. And she loves Satyabhama. And she's reading it, and she's like, and when she comes to the part, she's like, I can't believe you made me read this on our vacation. We are out there in the Valley of Flowers, and I'm so stressed out because, you just killed Satyabhama. So, yeah, I think that was very cruel of me in hindsight. But I loved the reaction, and I know I was doing something right. But it was very difficult for me to write that, honestly. I kept thinking that, because that was a scene I thought of before I even started writing the book. Like, I think in an earlier interview, I think in a discussion with Mihir, I spoke about how I thought of the scene, the battle between Kalyavan and Satyabhama, and how the prophecy can be twisted. And that's how, around which the entire book developed. But towards the end, I got so attached to Satyabhama that I just did not want to let her go. And I thought, maybe, can I get a silver wolf to fight her? But I was like, no, that would not do justice to my vision and the story which I have in mind. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know how George R. R. Martin does it. Like, he does it again and again. So I wish I could get to his mind when he wrote The Red Wedding. Like how did that wreck him? So yeah.
But for The Red Wedding, he had actually taken the inspiration from an actual event in the English War of Roses history.
Wedding.
So he had some context to go on, and of course he's always been a little bit cruel towards his characters, not just in the Song of Ice and Fire, but if you look at his previous books as well, all of his like horror books or standalone books before that, his characters often have a rough time of things. Yeah. So you can perhaps chalk it off to that. And this one actually is on par with Ned Stark losing his head. Like the shock which you get on reading when that happens, of Satyabhama losing and Krishna and all the Silver Wolves realizing that she's dead and Kalyavan has won. So that's just like, it's the same shock value. At least for me, I felt that way.
Yeah, definitely felt the same way. I read that last night, and it was like something's gonna happen. This and here we like, oh, she's really dead.
I actually got a lot of that too. Like, is Satyabhama dead? Because a lot of people asked me that towards the end, Muchukun looks at someone and
yes,
yeah,
and Silver Wolf.
Yeah, and I mean, I can just confirm that that's not Satyabhama. That's all I
It's
can say. But sorry,
is it Storm? Ah, okay.
but yeah, there are a few contenders there. But I got few messages that is that Satyabhama? Please tell me Satyabhama. I was like, no, she had a funeral. She's
Mhm.
unfortunately gone. But yeah.
Like we might find out, right? Because Muchukunda has gone off somewhere. Because Krishna sees there's footsteps leading somewhere else, like to the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
northeast part of from where Mathura is. So maybe we'll
Mhm.
find out if and what happens in the future.
Yeah, it'll be fun. I promise.
I could add a comment. MBH has so many characters. We can always explore different versions, stories, and bring in different perspectives. I'd really love to ask, why did you think of choosing Shishupal's POV?
Shishupal.
Shishupal.
Oh,
Sorry, I'm going to butcher all the names. I apologize.
perfectly fine. Thanks, Ankit. So, again, my idea of the whole reason why the book is called Sons of Darkness is because I chose characters who I think were, represented, like they had a lot of injustice done to them. And I wanted to get into their eyes and see how the book is. For example, Shashupal is considered your traditional villainous character in the original rendition. But then when I try to get into his mind or read about what was written, he was going to marry this princess and Krishna abducts her, without even talking to him. And Shishupal technically is supposed to be related to Krishna. And, maybe
Mhm.
Krishna could have had a conversation with him rather than just abduct the woman he was going to marry, who he had fallen in love with. And ultimately, also, the journey that Shishupal follows in the original epic and the further injustice that are meted out to him, for me, felt overkill. And I just wanted to bring that out, I suppose. I really uh, wanted to see that a person scorned, like you always say that hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, right? I think the reverse adage kind of, obviously not a general rule, applies to a man scorned, I suppose. So I wanted to get into that idea, and Shishupal just did not want the limelight. And I think uh, I really didn't expect him to be loved by so many people, though, because I think we've discussed this before, that he's this reluctant soldier, and he's good. I mean, he does everything right, but there is no charisma to him. There is no added flair to him. He has no ego. None of the things which make a character like heroic of sorts. But I think that's where people connected to him a lot. That he's just trying to do the thing which gets him out of trouble. He doesn't care about right or wrong. He just needs to be out of the limelight and live his life peacefully. And being clubbing him with an agent of chaos like Eklavya was just like, I had a blast with that. I think it was
He's
a
an
good.
everyman, he's an everyman. I think that's why most people could identify with him.
Yeah.
He's just a simple guy who, like you mentioned, he's been scorned.
Mm.
He wants to get away from that. I would say he's not a hero, but he's like a reluctant hero. He wants to do the right thing, because if you see his recollections, he doesn't really like what's happening in the war, but he's going
Right.
along because he believes his emperor Jarasandh is
Yeah.
doing the right thing, what he needs to do. And he doesn't really hate Krishna as well. Like he dislikes what happened, but he's kind of moved a little bit past it, at least
Right.
from what you have said in the text as well. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think in the Swayamvar, I wrote one line from Shishupal's perspective that he does not want to kill Krishna,
mhm.
but if Krishna died, he would not mind.
Yeah.
I think that kind of reflects the state of mind. And I think what he feared does come into action because, technically him being thrown into the limelight by Jarasan somehow ends up him holding Karna's nephew on his shoulders and that guy dying, and that was stupid of him, and he really regrets that, and that's why his journey then puts him into Mathura as a spy, and outskirts of Mathura, where again he thought he can do no harm, but because of Eklavya, he ends up being right in the middle of the battle. Like every time Shishupal tries to run away from the main theater,
Mhm.
circumstances push him right into the center of it. So I love the whole idea of this character constantly tumbling against trees, and no matter how hard he tries to escape the maze of politics and the daggers that exist, he just finds himself right back in the center. And I think that's something which I really enjoyed with Shishupal. So yeah.
And I could add, we would always love a different book with cut versions of your story.
The Mohanty cut. I would like that too,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, we'll start a hashtag. And it would be disheartening if the covers and story had to be changed because of publishers.
I don't think they'd change the story, to be honest. And Daniel, I hope so too, man. I hope so too. That's really kind
I
of
have
you
a
to say. But
small follow-up regarding Shishupal, especially for what you mentioned. And there's a line in the book, Gaurav, which says that, he recollects that he missed out on marrying Rukmani, but then he married a monster.
yeah.
And we don't ever see a mention of whom he married at all. But there's that one line, he married a monster. What does that mean? Is that something, is that just a throwaway line, something major down the
Uh,
line?
it doesn't. I'm not going to really delve too much into that in the books, maybe yet, but Shishupal does marry someone with who he ends up having a child in the original epic, but he never stays with her. At least that's the scene in the original epic. So I just gave it the fiction that they both don't really have a good time. Not every husband and wife get along. So in that sense, they are estranged, and he's very happy that she's back wherever she is, and he's here. So, in fact, when I read, I don't know how many of you have read The Kings of the Wild, but there's this character called Matrick. Anyway, so he has a problem with his wife. So, anyway, I read that after I finished Sons of Darkness. I'm like, okay, I relate to that. It's just a throwaway line, I just said. But I think that kind of adds again to Shishpal's thing that his wife was giving him a lot of main character energy, and he couldn't handle that. So, he's like, he just wants to be in the sidelines.
Your world has literal monsters. So I was actually wondering, like, whom has he married? Like, because when you say monster, is it really a monster? Or is it just like, expression?
Actually, sorry, now that we talk about people who are dying, I don't know, this thought suddenly came in my head. I think it's almost cheating, and I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, but I love how Steven Erikson brings back his dead characters as ghosts, and and that's amazing in a way because, you kind of reconnect with them. I'm not going to do that, but I can see why he wants to do that because it's amazing to see those characters come back. Does not give a touch of finality to those characters, I suppose, but it's still I can relate to that as to why he would want to do that. Sorry, random throwaway thought from my end, but yeah.
Hey, George R. R. Martin did that with Lady Stoneheart, like, after the brutal Red
Yeah.
Wedding. Lady Stoneheart coming back in the epilogue of Storm of Swords. That was that was even a bigger shock. No, wait, not the epilogue, but like close to the epilogue.
Yeah,
Storm of Swords as
very.
well. That was like as close to a shocker as possible.
Yeah, because he does not do that. His character stayed dead all the time, and
Yeah,
for her to come back that way was epic.
I mean, supposedly Jon Snow might come back if he ever releases the sixth book
Right.
as well. So we'll find out.
We'll find out.
I'm pretty sure he's going to just change it just to mess around and make sure that his book is not flowing the same plot as the one. I don't know. How does what the fact that a show has released and people kind of know your storyline does to an author. Does he change it? Does he stick to it? I mean, his writing is itself very beautiful. So it's not that even if it's the same plot, I think he's going to do a great job, especially because the show did not focus on the Greyjoy and there's so many other characters they just left out. So it does leave a lot for us to consume. But anyway, whenever it comes out, we'll get to find out, I suppose.
One day, and knowing you're a George R. R. Martin fan, I should have known there'd be assassins at the wedding. I should have seen that coming.
Yeah, I think I put out a story. Someone messaged me saying that, dude, my favorite. I know Battle of Mathura was a climax, which is awesome, but I love the yellow wedding. I'm like, that's so nice. Someone called a swamper like a color wedding, and I'm like, that's highest form of compliment, man. Thank you. Oh yeah.
That's awesome. Pramita has a question. As an SFF author, how do you fare in the demarcation between speculative and so-called literary fiction? Ragan to have potential for great SFF literature. Why do you think this bias exists?
Paromita always asks masters of literature type heavy answer questions, which make me think I hope I'm able to sound smart while I'm answering this. So thank you so much, Paromita, for always putting me on the hot seat. But talking about the demarcation between speculative and the literary fiction genre, I think it's all shades on a pH scale, I suppose. Some people write heavier, denser books. Some people write really light stuff like Legends and Lattes or Kings of the Wild, for example. So thank you if you think that Raghav has the potential to be a great SFF literature. I think the bias kind of has always existed because as literature enthusiasts, people love the heavy and the dense because if they're able to decode complex lines, I think you kind of get a sense of snobbishness, I suppose. I'm not quite sure. I really don't know the answer to this because I love reading books which have won the Booker. For example, I enjoy them. They are really heavy. But once I'm done reading them, they really affect me. But in a way, I forget about them. On the other hand, when I read Game of Thrones, Brandon Sanderson, Lawrence, those characters stay with me for like a really long time. I don't think I ever forget about them. So, in that sense, I feel this demarcation is made by people who just read literary fiction, because for us who read speculative or fantasy, we just think all books deserve to be read. You just find your poison and you just, have a blast drinking them. Um, so I think slowly, I think there are a lot of authors who delve in speculative who are destroying this bias. For example, Ursula Le Guin, N.K. Jemisin to a certain extent, they write a lot of good characters, good fantasy books, which people interpret as literary genre as well, like literary fiction as well. But then I think it becomes a problem. Sorry, I'm just deep diving into it as I'm thinking it out loud. Sometimes those authors themselves do not like to be called speculative fiction, and that I feel does damage this genre's reputation that way. I think in one of the earlier interviews I spoke about how when I was trying to pitch my book as a fantasy genre book in India, where fantasy in that sense is dormant, a lot of people confused it, thinking it to be erotica. So I had to change my pitch line to grimdark epic saga rather than write fantasy, just to like get through the door. So in that sense, I don't know. I think biases will exist. It's the narcissism of minor differences concept. But as long as you are having fun and you are reading and you're having a great time, I think that's what matters. Because I mean, honestly, think about it. I think the last Booker Prize book I read was Luminaries by Eleanor Catton. Again, a great book. But does it really have a community discussing what happens with the characters? Probably not. But you pick up uh, any book from the fantasy genre, you will have a dedicated Reddit thread on it, discussing this, that, wanting another book to come out. Book talk, booktubers, reviewers, bloggers, all discussing the various Easter eggs left by the author. So in that sense, I think the bias is artificial and is just a refuge of the snobbish. And that's okay. Sorry if I'm coming off across as harsh, but it is what it is.
No, not at all.
No.
But actually, on that note,
Oh no, go ahead.
yes, yeah. So on that note, I think the books we read really determine how we are writing stuff or approaching stuff. Naturally, when I was writing Sons of Darkness, I was in this whole Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire, Furor, and I was reading all those similar books. Now that I'm writing the second book, incidentally, I have been reading N.K. Jemisin and Ursula Le Guin and reading slightly heavier books, and I can see that somewhat delve into my writing where I'm like, oh wow, that's a pretty thought which you need to marinate in. So I think I'm having a lot of fun with it, and I think the books you read really influence your hands while you're typing. So I initially was wondering if that changes the flavor of Sons of Darkness, and I read it again, and I thought, no, it does not. In fact, it gives it a new mix, adding cilantro to it, I suppose. Different spices to it. So I think I'm enjoying the process. So hopefully, Dance of Shadows will be different yet refreshing.
I love that. I love that. That's a little bit of spice to it. Pardon me to add another comment. I really appreciated how the female characters had different approaches to emancipation in your book. It was not just external strength, but also intrinsic feminine power that resonated a lot.
I just want to say Paramita has like the most beautiful English because she's using some really fancy words as well. It reminds me of like of our English teachers, Gourav, just so as to speak.
Yeah, I should have drank some coffee before reading her questions. So yes, I have that coffee.
I love it, Paramita. Please keep them coming. And thank you so much, by the way, for appreciating the female characters. And again, even with Satyabhama, I discussed this with Joanna, which she picked up on, that while she loved Satyabhama's character, there's a point of time where she is, for lack of a better word, trivializing the violence suffered by Draupadi. She tells Draupadi that you should man up and face it. You're in a good position. A lot of people will want to be with you. And Joanna thought that that was trauma is trauma, and you can't judge it from your scale of trauma. And I think, and I'm glad she caught on to that, because that's what I really wanted with that scene. Because sometimes when we are going for feminist narratives, we make them all white, without giving them their own flaws. Because sometimes when you have suffered so much, you kind of create a cocoon where you think that your suffering is the only one that matters, and anyone suffering in your eyes is slightly lower because they come from a privileged place. It's like, no, it doesn't matter. And I think that's something which I saw happen where when it comes to the whole idea of fat shaming, for example, a lot of feminist influencers were ridiculing women who were having a problem with being too skinny, right? Saying that their trauma can never match up to the trauma which is faced by, like slightly larger women in our society. And that did not sit well with me, thinking that fair. I'm sure that they might have suffered a lot more because of traditional perception, but the trauma that those thin, skinny women might have faced, it for them it might be huge. And when you receive something stressful, you don't sit there to compare with other people. You just feel really sucky about it. So I think that's what I wanted to bring in through Satyabhama. That even though she's this great character, there are flaws within her as well. So yeah, sorry, I spoke for a long time, but yeah.
Yeah, that's what we want. So
Yes.
good stuff. Yeah. And Anita's here.
Yep.
And when POV shifted to wolves, my first hint was we may lose, but I thought she would kill before dying. I'm sorry, I'm really bad at the names. So
Kalyawan.
It's cool. Yeah. Oh, that's nice, Anita. I'm glad it still surprised you though. So yeah.
And Anita's
2 for 2, Gaurav. 2 for 2. Now me and her both think it's Storm.
Steve, what do you think? Do you have any answer? Thanks.
I thought maybe it was Storm, but I wasn't sure. I really had no idea. So I'm leaning towards Storm now. That seems to be the popular opinion. I'll jump on the bandwagon.
Could you just have a line of a silver? Like, there's just one line about it being a silver wolf, but because there's so many silver wolves and it was so chaotic at the end, like like the way it was written, because Storm fell, like Storm and Rain were fighting, and I remember Storm falling, but then, of course, that it could be anything. So we'll just have to wait. But if I had to put money, I would say Storm right now. But
Okay.
And Paramita 100% agrees. Thanks so much for the thoughtful answer. Ursula Le Guin is one of my idols.
that's true. We don't actually see Storm.
We don't see. Yeah, that's very true.
We'll find out.
Mm-hmm. We only saw men attacking her.
The Yamanas.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of have like a two-parter question about the religion and mythology of the world, if that's okay, Gaurav. Because the original epic of MBH or Mahabharata, it's heavily influenced by the gods and, of course, Krishna, because he's the avatar. For our viewers, in Hindu mythology, Vishnu, Shiva, and Brahma are the holy trinity of the Hindu mythology, and Vishnu has taken 9 avatars so far. Fun fact, that's where the whole Avatar movie comes from. Like, the godly incarnation, the human incarnation of a god is called Avatar in Hindu mythology. Krishna is supposedly the 8th avatar during the time of the war of Mahabharata. Now, in your world, Gaurav, in this world, we don't really see, the gods are there, but the people who are the human beings right now, whom do they worship? There's not really a mention of any worship going on, like of the literal gods, because they, of course, don't think the gods exist, because they've been gone for like eons ago. The first part of the question is, whom do they pray to if there is such if there is a divinity in this world? And the second part of the question is dealing with, because you mentioned Ram, who is from the kingdom of Ayodhya, you mentioned Parshuram, who is actually an active player, and then you have Krishna. Now, as part of the original epic, they are all avatars of the same god of Vishnu. So,
right. Okay, so a lot of branches to the question, so I'll try and answer each one of them. One is the concept of avatar, and I really like the whole connection that you made to James Cameron movie, because even when I saw the movie, I was like, hey, that's our work. So that's definitely there. But with Avatar, when I was reading text on different avatars of Vishnu, I saw a lot of pushback when they classified Gautam Buddha as an avatar of Vishnu. right? Gautam Buddha, Steve, just to give some context, there are many religions in India. It's a multicultural, diverse place. So Buddhism at one point had become very popular. I mean, India is the birthplace of Buddhism. As a response to the tyrannical practices of Brahmanism in the Hindu culture. Um, but what Hinduism ultimately did, I mean, not consciously, it kind of assimilated Buddhism and Jainism and other religions into itself, almost making it feel like subsects. Even though Buddhism became huge outside India, in China, Sri Lanka, the Southeast Asia, but in India, it kind of got assimilated in this juggernaut of Hinduism. And Buddha, being this amazing figure, religious figure, got tagged as an avatar of Vishnu. So that got me thinking into the whole theology behind classifying someone as a prophet or an avatar. It's basically huge religious leaders or amazing people who you think are so good that you think that they have to be godly, and you kind of attribute to them avatar kind of characteristics. So, with that thinking in mind, I decided to come into Sons of Darkness. Now, talking about the history of India, we have had different pantheon of gods at different points of time. Initially, in the very beginning, we just had the concept of, which is very interesting because Robert Jordan took this concept of in Wheel of Time. We had two energies called Shakti and Shiva, which was the male energy and the female energy, exactly described as Saidin and Saidar in the Wheel of Time. And that kind of became a very Greek pantheon where you had gods after different elements. That pantheon then got forgotten over time, and then we had the Holy Trinity, which is basically Vishnu the preserver, Brahma the creator, and Shiva the destroyer. So you had like the concept of destroyer, creator, and preserver. That this last Trinity we still worship very religiously in India. It has continued for thousands of years. But when the Mahabharata was taking place, there was a sort of interplay between these two pantheons. The Zeus pantheon, I'm calling it Zeus for the benefit of everyone, but Zeus's counterpart in India was Indra, and this Holy Trinity pantheon. So what I decided is to stick to the former version for now, where they do worship someone like after the elements. You have Indra being worshipped somewhere. You have in the south them worshipping some earth goddess or something on those lines. But if you notice, when they're worshipping Indra, Indra is actually a shortened name of the king of Devas, Thorindra's, Thorindrazius. So basically, their earlier masters who owned them, and when they left, the impact that they left, they started worshipping them without knowing that it's the same name as the Devas. So that's the thing which I wanted to create. Like, have a pantheon of gods, yes, but those names actually being names of the Devas, and them not realizing that they're worshipping their own slave masters, and eventually leading them to change into the Holy Trinity. I mean, that's at least my thinking. So, yeah, that was a lot of like info dump. So sorry about that, but that's what I was going for. That I want to have this pantheon, which is actually not the pantheon. Okay, the best example again I can give again, who's read Malazan, is about the Toblakai, who's the huge warrior. I forgot Karsa. Correct. So he's worshipping a few gods who don't turn out to be really gods, who turn out to be the Tianemas, right? Something on those lines, where you're worshipping gods, but they are actually not gods. They are this pantheon, Zeus-like pantheon, who were the Devas. And then they find out the true gods who actually exist behind the scene. So, yeah, religious, the gods concept, DD, I actually struggle in the beginning just to create a coherent system, because Hinduism being so vast, not only in geography but in time, it's a challenge for anybody to reconcile them into one single narrative. But hey, so after adversity lies accomplishment. So yeah.
So besides the Unni Ethereal, which is this new religion which is founded by Jarasandha, or at least is so. What does the rest of the Aryavat practice? Like, whom do they venerate, so as to speak?
So they, the Riverlands, the main Aryavat proper, so as to speak, worship something called the seven. The seven elements that exist. You have earth, fire, water, and so on and so forth. And in fact, the seven are represented by the Sapta Rishis, the seven priests, each one for each element. So that's the main religion that's there. Unni Ethereal is something which is again like a subsect of this god. That's why the Saptarishis are not acting against them yet, but they're a very hardliner version of it, like a very conservative right wing, so as to speak. Again, as I said, when we write, it's sometimes a reflection of our times. So in I kind of the entire hardcore writing mentality is something which I'm trying to bring in through the Oni Etral, who do worship, but they only worship two of the gods. And again, when there are so many gods, different regions, like for example in Greece, you had certain regions which worship Aphrodite, someone region who worship Hera. Similarly, in Aryavata as well, different states or different kingdoms worship different deities as the patron god, so as to speak. That's something I'm going to delve a lot more in the second book, but in the first book, I've just kind of given a brief idea of what it is and how it is. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very interesting. Lots of good stuff. Parmeet had a comment. Le Guin writes in a foreword to Tenahu, women, kids, the poor, the old, the powerless. I didn't want to change Earthsea, but I needed to see what Earthsea looked like to us. Will we get to see the same in your world in later books?
So I could not finish the first line, but
that's okay.
I mean, Paramita, you just throw heavy lines at me, right? I mean, I hope so. That's all I can say. I mean, somewhere in my fantasy world where I'm sleeping and I have no control over my reins, I can imagine that I might reach somewhere to George R.R. Martin's scale. But to reach Ursula Le Guin's thoughts, it's unbelievable. There's an account on Twitter called Le Guin Bot, which basically every hour puts out one single line from any of her books. And each of a line which that bot account puts out, and it's so beautiful and mesmerizing. It's so deep and dense. I don't know if I can ever reach that level, but I really hope that as I'm writing the book, I don't want it to be just another fantasy adventure. I really want it to connect to people and feel like, oh fuck, this is also happening in the times around us. That's one. And secondly, I really want there to be some form of social commentary inside that. Not like a preaching kind, but somewhere where you just feel like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. So that's something which I really want. I think I love those kind of books. So I really hope that I'm able to accomplish that as well. Yeah.
And Aaron had a comment. After some very articulate discussion, I'm going to change the direction slightly. Where did the idea of Nala falling into the donkey come from? I'm still chuckling about that scene.
It actually came. Oh, wow, Aaron, thank you. No one asked me that question, and thank you for bringing this question to me. I was chased by a buffalo when I was a kid. Or I'm not quite sure the right thing, and I was wearing a red. I blame it on the red T-shirt that I was wearing, and so when I was thinking of Nala falling down the cliff and just like hanging on to, I don't know, going the complete Logan Nine Fingers way and just holding onto a branch. Suddenly there was a flashback in my head of my own life of me being chased by an animal, and I just gave it a twist that I think Nala falling into a donkey and the donkey again falling into the cliff, while very tragic for the donkey, was in a way humorous. So I love the something which I've tried slightly consciously and slightly subconsciously is that whenever I do some grim dark scene or like a violent scene for that matter, I do layer it with a touch of humor. I think I enjoy the whole shock laugh effect. So I think that's that's definitely the place for sure. I think at the same place where when Satyabhama and Kalyavan are fighting, Eklavya gets turned on and he's right very close to Shishupal and Shishupal begins to feel very uncomfortable. So I think that was the whole idea too. The same.
And Prometheus says, I think the process has already started in Sons of Darkness. Already, as you mentioned, we are moving towards different societies in later books. I am very hopeful.
For sure. Like in Dance of Shadows, the whole idea is again to show people who are represented traditionally as evil. In Dance of Shadows, we are going to have a lot of Rakshasas. In terms of, so deal with that as a sub-race, as a different race, and their thought process and their culture. So that's something which I really intend to kind of bring out the subjugation of tribals and bring that into that, using Rakshasas to show that. And I hope I'm able to do it. But thank you, Paramita, for noticing this.
And underneath the comments, wearing red was really scary when I visit my native as well.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, don't wear red.
Gaurav, you have some, certain things mentioned in the books which are really, I don't know, throwaway lines or just maybe some seeds for later on as well. One of the main things which I thought was really interesting was Parshuram, because he's actually a mythological figure. He's a scary mythological figure, but he's there. Now, in the books, we kind of find out that that he has trained the not the white swan, sorry, the white eagle,
Mhm.
Bhishma, but
Yeah.
then he's also trained Karna, and we don't really get to see what happened after that. But he keeps on mentioning, this one name over and over again, because whenever he tells people that, I have a new novice, which is
Mhm.
Nala,
Mhm.
they kind of everybody brings up this one character called Fail Not
Yeah.
all the time. And it's not just once, it's there mentioned quite a few
Yeah.
times across. Like even Parshuram is when he's thinking about he remembers about Fail Not. Who is Fail Not? Or is that something like for something big later on? And it's perfectly fine if you don't want to answer that, but I just wanted to bring that up. Like, is that something of importance for later on?
Yeah, that's definitely very important. It comes off in the second or maybe third book, but yeah, it's big. And that was deliberate. So, as usual, good catch, Mihir.
I feel like I'm just gonna be like, you're gonna ban me from talking about
No, I love it. I mean, I love it. I think as just like the creator of these tiny things, sometimes when you leave and when it's caught by a good eye, and it's just amazing. I think my dad caught it, but for a very different reason. He's like he told me in Hindi, but he said that what is this fail not? What a weird spelling it is. I was like, just relax, Papa. It sounds like fail not, and he never fails. Do you get it? It's like
Mhm.
you're stupid. I'm like, thanks. So that's definitely one part of it. But yeah, he it does play a role. Uh, yeah, for sure. And I do intend like so one of the again my whole wings of imagination like a prequel or a spin-off or whatever it is. I would love to like the idea that I have in my head is to go with Parshuram,
Mhm.
his life and his process. I think that would be really amazing to have this priest who's an assassin. I think is a very interesting concept to like get my hands dirty in. Hopefully in the future.
And his axe, his double-bladed axe with the
Yeah.
golden symbols. That is there a story behind that as well? Is that a special weapon?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's a special weapon or not, but there's a story behind that.
It's very good. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Um,
Speaking of web, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead,
no, no,
Mahir.
go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask about towards. I think it's the first 10% or so of the book. One of the things that really struck me in that first bit was the soldiers who would mount children to their shields during
Mhm.
battle. Was
Mhm.
that inspired by history, or was that from somewhere else, or where did that idea come from?
I I I really don't want to say that it came from my depths of my imagination because that would make me really twisted. But I think I can't remember. I did read a lot of historical context of barbarity in wars involving babies and children. I don't particularly remember them being strapped to a shield the way Eklavya ordered it to be done. But yeah, that's definitely one of the things probably came from my mind. But after having a conversation with Michael Fletcher, I can tell you that when people write disturbing things, it does not mean that they are necessarily disturbing in real life. I think I must caveat this.
No, yeah,
So
you're good around us. We're good. Yeah.
I think honestly, if you even look at the Mongol history and especially the Mongols, how they did a lot of their tactics, I'm pretty sure
mhm.
they must have come close. If not live people or dead bodies for sure. So, Goro, you're not too far off. Don't worry.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like when I sometimes read of the horrific things done, whether be it in the era of slavery, Mongols, I just feel that reality is so much more grim dark than anything we can come up with our imagination. I think Poppy War is a great example of that because that's where the author R.F. Kuang, when she's writing about the last scene, the battle that takes place, the violence is not changed at all. She directly picks it up from the rape of Nanking,
Hmm.
the historic event that is called that. And she doesn't change it because she does not need to change it. The actual violence that took place in the pillage of the Chinese city was so horrific and barbaric that like nothing we can think of can actually undo what was done. So that was pretty like yeah. Yeah. But the baby strapping thing, I will research on this. If it's not, then I'm going to take credit. Hey, that's me. The Taylor Swift song that has come, no, hey, it's me. That one.
Any of the comments? Men are evil enough. I wonder what more evil Rakshas will do.
Hmm.
I'm Anita, but you should know that I'm like the devil's advocate, but I mean that literally in the sense that I love representing people who are traditionally considered devilish or evil and kind of portraying their good side. Wow, I think that's where my lawyer skills are coming into picture, but I'm really hoping that you get to see a nicer side of Rakshasas because yeah, there were some good Rakshasas too. So
Hmm.
that we can see from their perspective.
I have a question a little bit later about this good Rakshasas because there's a funny side story about Krishna fighting against Shiva in the original epic as well, which is the only instance of Vishnu and Shiva clashing in that regard. So maybe for
Yeah,
later.
yeah, sure.
Pardon me, had a comment. Please share again how you came up with the Malefice series of its name of Ragavrita. It has personal meaning to me as a reader.
Uh, Thank you so much, Paramita. I know I love how Raghavrita sounds so mellifluous, and it's actually I did a lot of deep thinking into it. I wanted a name which was very uniquely and intrinsically Indian and Vedic that has no translation in any other language. And I really deep dived in my hunt for this. And I'm so lucky that I found these names. For example, Rag is a musical note which the Harvard musicians said that their entire department said that, okay, we don't have a word for it. Like there is no word that exists in Latin, Greek, or English that can describe the sounds which a rag means. It's just so Vedic. So they gave it an English place in the English dictionary as its own word. Similarly, when it comes to Rita, Rita is an ancient Vedic concept. That's where our entire Hindu philosophy circulates around. It is the law, to type that out in English, it's a law that governs fates, which means that even fates are somewhat not their own agent. There is something that governs them. So a loose translation of Ragavrita would be the hymn of fates. And I think that really stayed with me, and I loved that. And it totally described what Sons of Darkness was doing. And giving them the name Ragavrita had an Indian touch. Because what happens with the retellings in India, Steve, is they always give it a character name. Like, let's say, Draupadi, Karna's reimagination, it will be called Karna. Or there'll be a very Indian name to it. I wanted to distinguish Sons of Darkness as a reimagining and not as a retelling. So that's why I was very particular about having Sons of Darkness as the name. But I wanted to stick to my Desi roots and have the series name as something, Desi. So that's where Raghavrata comes in. And I'm glad that it has personal meaning to you. So yeah, I think that's where, on a very side note, I feel slash fear that the book's framing might change because the series name might come into the picture, and I don't know where the wording can fit in the cover. So let's see. The future is interesting.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Fingers-
Permita, reality is so much more grimdark than anything we can come up with in our imagination. So true. Anita read The Rape of Nanking early this year. While it was disturbing, I felt the Battle of Mathura was more disturbing with what happened to the Silver Wolves. I still get nightmares about that.
I'm still going to take credit and be very happy about that comment, even though I should not. But hey, thank you. I'm glad the nightmares have affected you. So it's a horrible thing to say, but as an author, I love it. So yeah, but, I mean, writing that was also very, very. It was horrible. I really thought that maybe can I just let some silver wolves, and the manner of deaths for everyone was like it kind of was a reflective of their name. That's something which I was conscious of. Like for example, when Calm died, she was just sitting against a wall, and she looks somewhere, and she does a mistake. Like she thinks someone is there in the building opposite her, but she turns away, and when she turns, there's a crossbow quarrel which is lodged in her head, and then she dies calmly. There is nothing that happens with her. Similarly, there's someone called Mischief who does something stupid, like she just takes the munitions and blasts us right there, and the entire place blows up. Storm is taken away by so many men, like in a storm of men.
Storm of
Oh,
Swords.
right. And similarly, Rain gets peppered with spears. Like a rain effect of raindrops falling into her and piercing her. So that was something which I very consciously did, keeping it subtle but giving the characters the names which are somewhat associated with how they ultimately passed away. And again, this was not conscious in the starting, but towards the end when I realized that, oh wait, this is happening, that's cool. So it's a subtle theme that I sort of added. But yeah.
Maybe we can move on to a little bit lighter topic, because I know this has been some really dark stuff, Gaurav. I wanted to ask you about, because George R. R. Martin has this famous comment, because again, he's writing a multi-POV story, and, the POVs have always increased. But he has specifically said that he will never feature his story, or he'll never feature the POV from three people's, point of view. Howland Reed, Littlefinger, and Varys. These are the three people he will never feature the POV from. Similar to your story, or to your retelling or reimagining of this book, are there any specific characters who will never be POVs, or who will never get POVs as part of the story?
In the first book, I mean, Duryodhan will never get a POV for sure. That's something which I want him to be discovered by the eyes of other people who belong, like who are around him. So that was something I was very conscious of. Satyabhama, again, I had to debate very hard to make her a POV character or not, because in the early drafts I did write a few chapters from her perspective, but then I thought, no, I love the idea that she's being discovered from the point of view of her soldiers, from Draupadi's, from Krishna. So I really enjoyed that. But no, I've not written drawn a line in the sand yet as to which characters I will not cover. But I think, as just generally, I will try and avoid characters that have already been represented in retellings and choose lesser known characters or the characters which I create. Like, as I'm going to inch forward in the series, I'm going to use a lot of characters which are my creations and use them to discover the other characters which are created by the original writer, Vyas. So, yeah, that's the plan.
Oh, that's a good.
But that's a good thought. I think after this conversation, I'm going to end up thinking this through the night. Like, which character should I never write from? That's something which I've never thought of. But yeah, that's actually a very good point.
I mean, I like the idea, like, the Duryodhan is, we will never get his thoughts, but we'll always see from other people's point of views, because he's such a fascinating character. Even in the book, the small snippets that we get from Karna's viewpoint, you really see their friendship. That is such a strong bond, and the way they have fun, with each other as well. So, will we
That's something which is going to be a major thing in the second book as well. Duryodhan and Karna like form a major arc in the second book. So, looking forward to it. I love the whole idea of having pairs. I somehow don't know how I ended up doing that. It was not a conscious decision, but I realized that all my characters have some sort of pairing, like Shishupal and Eklavya, and Bhanumati and Karna, and so in that sense, they were all following this 2-2-2 system. So I'll try and mix that up a little bit next book, but let's see how that works.
Nice. And Anita had a question. What happened to Vile at the end?
I don't know.
that must be so fun for you to have all these different theories and what happened to these different characters.
Yeah. I have a blast, especially when people ask me. It's just amazing because I wanted Sons of Darkness to, like, worst case scenario, still feel like a standalone book, so that if it doesn't work out, people don't end up liking it. The limited few who do end up liking it do get a kind of closure that Krishna wins, and that's it. The book is over there, I suppose. But I really did want to leave certain very open-ended questions where people like wondering who is the Son of Darkness really? Why did Parshuram not reach in time to stop Muchukund from rising if he indeed is the Son of Darkness? And so on and so forth. So I think this one question, that who is that missing person who Muchukund saw, is something which I have a blast not answering.
Also, Parshuram at the very end, like the very last chapter which we get, he calls. Can I spoil? Can I ask about that, Steve, or Gaurav? Because is that too big of a spoiler? Because it deals with the Son of Darkness thing.
I mean, your call.
He meets Karna and he calls him Son of Darkness, but I don't think that would be like a too simple, right? Like that would be a too simple thing. Is that just a phrase that he likes to use to describe Karna because of what has happened in the past, or is that something more to that?
I don't know.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I can totally accept that.
Yeah, I think the idea of writing that last part as well, I was debating that a lot, but I did not want to leave readers like thinking that, okay, what happened to the other characters? Like, what happened to Karna? So I want to give them that thing that, okay, we know where they are, that we know that they exist. Don't worry, and it's going to be covered in the second book. But here is something explosive that happens. That for some reason Karna is imprisoned,
Mhm.
you know, and why is he imprisoned? And leaves like a lot of burning questions at the end. And I think that's what I want to do with that book,
You
and
leave
kind
him
of
burning too. Not only you leave us with burning questions, you leave him burning, Karna burning as well. So that's
yeah.
The
So yeah, that scene where people are like torturing him and taking off his shield is also very pivotal. It becomes a pivotal moment in the second book as well. So in a way, the last part of the book, the epilogue, is more like a chapter from the next book rather than like just an epilogue in itself. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to.
can
I've
you
almost reached that portion, by the way, while I'm writing the second book. So I'm having a good time.
Can you
Nice.
talk a little bit about Karna's Kavach Kundala? Because I know for Indian readers again, or the people who know the MBH, they know what that gold plate and the golden earrings are. But for the readers who might not know about that, the whole concept of Kavach Kundala, what it means, and why do I call it Kavach Kundala? Can you just tell it for our viewers, please?
I mean, all I can say that he was born. There's a armor which is attached to his body, the way I've described in the book. I really can't say anything more because that's a major plot device in the second book as well. We know why is he wearing the armor, what is his breastplate, and everything. So, all of that we really delve deep dive into that in the second one. So I'm just going to like leave it there. But yeah, I've always been fascinated with the idea that Karna was born with an armor, but I just wanted to give it a bit of rhyme and reason, and I think second book is where I get a chance to do that. So sure.
the end where Krishna declares, I won. The last line of the book. It kind of reminded me a little bit, and I'll try not to be too spoilery, of Breaking Bad. And I think if those of you who have seen it will know, I think the scene that I'm talking about where he says "I won," and then,
Hmm.
but that kind of the whole everything's a mess, and he did all these things and like I won, and everything's just destroyed. So
Hmm.
I
Oh,
don't
I
want to say too
haven't.
much about that. Oh, okay.
Okay, I haven't watched it yet. Sometimes what happens is when everyone's recommending you something, you have this inherent response that, okay, I'll watch it when the whole furor has died. That's something which happened to me in Breaking Bad in law school because everyone around me was watching it. And I think I was a little late to the show, so I was defiant in my own way. Like, I will not watch it now. And I haven't gotten around to it yet, but I really intend to like consume it. Unfortunately, when you get to things too late, you already kind of get a sense of which characters are going to die. But I hope I enjoy the journey of the death as well.
Oh, it's
So
so good. It's really good.
yeah,
Oh, and
yeah,
you should also watch Better Call Saul. Like that, I
Yeah.
feel is a better show.
yeah.
So,
Uh,
pretty cool.
Looking forward to it. I think a lot of people also told me that the Mathura's Three Walls
Mhm.
reminds them of a show which I haven't watched because it's not available in India yet. It's an anime show called Attack on Titans.
Hmm.
It became huge last year, and they also have this whole three-walled city which is under siege. And I was like, great minds think alike, man. What can I say? So I'm just being a little cocky, but I think the whole three-wall system is a very historical concept of cities building defenses, and that it's nothing unique to that book or my book. It's just like
Mhm.
I just made them impregnable in mine. But yeah, it's a very common form of architecture in a lot of forts and fortresses, especially in India. When you go to the Rajasthan side, the
Mhm.
fortresses always used to have like three-tier or four-tier walls to have a layered defense of sorts. So, yeah.
Parmit had a question. Do you prioritize lending voices to those who are denied one, like Eklavya, or does it affect you personally while writing? It impacts me a lot as a reader, a feeling of voiceless being heard.
It does allow me to like discover me in a bit. For example, because my method of writing is a lot where I split my personality into different bits and put them into characters. At least with Krishna, it's someone like his responses were something which I would do. So does it go for Mati again, who has no conscience whatsoever? This is not helping my case, but I really related to those characters. Karna is someone I wished I could behave like him. So again, these were ideals I lived to. While writing Eklavya, when I was writing the scenes, I think it connected me a lot. I always knew that there was injustice done to Eklavya, that Eklavya has a very sad past. And, so, but when I was writing that, because as I said, I write the whole iceberg method where I just show the tip.
Mhm.
Um, writing that tip kind of really helped me understand that there's so much depth to this character that I can explore. So it did impact me. Honestly, not as a writer as much, more like reading my own stuff. I was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense, and that this is this. So making the voiceless being heard is something which I hope I can champion the cause well, because I really have a nice time writing it. To be honest, it allows me to discover a lot of thought processes that I would not have, because you put yourself in someone else's shoes, so you tend to appreciate their viewpoint a lot better. You know, so like for example, in the second book, if I'm writing from a perspective of a tyrant or like a religious fanatic, for example, it's very easy to classify them as like hardcore right wingers, hardline conservatives, blah blah blah. But when I put myself in their shoes, I try to rationalize why they might be thinking that. Does not mean that I agree with them, but it allows me to accord a sense of respect to where they're coming from. And I think that kind of will lead to a world where you can have fruitful exchange of discussion rather than simply create echo chambers where you just listen to voices which you like. Sorry again, Paramita, that I went on a long monologue, but I think you will appreciate it. But
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, Anita thinks you will love Breaking Bad.
thanks. I will watch it for sure. And
Really
I think
good
another
stuff.
House of Dragon just got over. I think there's just a vacuum in my life for a while. I'm watching Crown, and I think I need to get to something after that. So for sure.
It might just be fun for you to maybe watch Better Call Saul and then watch Breaking Bad just in the reverse order, because even though it's you release in they're released differently. But Better Call Saul is actually a prequel, and in my humble
Okay.
opinion, is actually better than Breaking Bad. So
And I
as a
think he's a
lawyer,
lawyer as well.
yeah, as
So
a lawyer, you might like it because it's literally it's all about law and all about him
yeah,
becoming wanting to become a good lawyer. That's literally it.
right.
So it's fantastic in my opinion.
Yeah, it's really good. The end was, I think Breaking Bad's ending was a little bit better. Just a little bit better.
I haven't seen the ending to Breaking. Like I'm waiting for it to come on Netflix to see. I've seen up to season 5. I'm waiting for season 6 and 7. Like I know they've broken into 2 parts, but I'm hoping to see it. So
Oh, wow. Okay. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts on
Steve,
that.
have you considered lending your voices to audiobooks? Sorry, a random question out there, but your voice is a good baritone, man. I think.
I've read a few short stories on the podcast, but
Okay.
yeah, I didn't realize how time consuming it is. It's very time consuming. Just to write
That's,
just a 1,000-page story takes me sometimes a couple of hours to
yeah.
read it and edit it, and yeah, it's respect to those audiobook readers out there.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like sometimes when I have to create reels, I have to say things out. Like when I'm talking about history, and sometimes I memorize it, or maybe I'll have the script. I will fumble after, like if I'm going beautifully for the 99%, and the last line I'll fumble, and then I have to redo the process. Or again, there's a lot of editing that's involved, and that's so cumbersome. So to imagine Stephen Pacey and all these guys reading the Wheel of Time, it's something unimaginable for me. So, but especially that's why they're so good at what they do. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
ooh.
And Kate, which original MBH character would you like to write in as a POV in the future? Also, would there be a Daughter of Darkness too?
The third book is called Daughter of Dawn. So maybe, let's see. But which original character would you like to write as a POV in the future? I'm very, very excited to write from the perspective of Arjun. Like I cannot wait. He is Karna's arch nemesis, like the Goku to his Vegeta. I don't know whichever example you want to pick. So that's something I can't wait. I'm so desperate to write Arjun. I wish I could bring him in the second book. I haven't been able to, but in the third book he features as a major character, and I can't wait to delve into his character. Like, and I think a lot of readers also want to read about this guy, this arch nemesis for the character who they love, because most readers who have loved Sons of Darkness belong to Team Karna. So I do want to give them the opposing faction as well, and yeah, and then it'll be a cool thing. I think that's what makes great rivalry, when you have given enough ammunition on both sides, and people then get divided because they're two different people who are very, very skilled at what they do. So Arjun is definitely someone which I'm looking forward to write from a point of view, the future, for sure.
And Anita agrees. Character work in Better Call Saul is just incredible. And Paramita, you were discussing probably the most important theme in our lives in literature, that for empathy and compassion, even amidst unspeakable tragedy, makes me even more hopeful about your work. And I am Team Karna all the way.
I hope I'm able to change that, Paramita, or at least give you a good arguing points from the other side. But Daughter of Dawn, yes, for sure. I'm like really. So all my book names, at least the first four, I haven't thought of the fifth title yet, are all in some way light related, like the Sons of Darkness. The second one is Dance of Shadows. The third book is Daughter of Dawn, and the fourth is Mirage of Moonlight. So like the four books are like set, and fifth book I will decide later. I haven't come to that part yet. I thought my dreams were getting way ahead of me, so I'll dream them back in. But yeah.
It's good to have a plan always.
Yeah. And choosing a name is itself like so much fun because you have to do slightly market research on the side that whether the name has been picked up or not. For example, I thought Sons of Darkness might have gone, and I did check in the fantasy genre. I was very fortunate that no one had taken it. The closest someone had come to it was a character called Son of Darkness in Malazan, where Anomander Rake is called Son of Darkness. That's it. But there's no book by that name. So I was very happy when I chose that title. But ultimately, when the book did go up on Amazon, I realized my folly that I had just compared it with SFF books. Because the top
Marvel.
search, even the first day, was Sons of Darkness, which was a vampire erotica novel. Okay, and which had on its cover someone sucking someone's blood. And I realized that, my a part of my family is slightly conservative, but they're really pumped up for the book. And the moment they go and write Sons of Darkness, that's the first thing that comes up. And I'm sure they will think, this boy is this way only. I'm sure he must have written erotica. So, and incidentally, the author of that book also his name starts with G, so that does not help my case at all. So that was. I mean, yeah. So, I'm going to be very careful about the next few books and make sure that I do a market compare, especially across erotica and vampire and BDS.
I can use Dance of Shadows will be a little bit more popular in fantasy because I know that there's definitely one series called Shadow Dance. So, but it's not the same name, but there's but all the books in that series are called a dance of something, dance of shadows, a dance of cloaks, a dance of this, a dance of that. So that's the only closest thing. But the Mirage of Moonlight, is definitely a unique title. I haven't heard of that.
Thanks. Any other prospective author listening to this, please don't take my name away. I've come to Mirage of Moonlight with a lot of difficulty.
Can you reserve a title ahead of time if you know what the title you want and it's not available now? Can you reserve it for later? Is there a way to do that?
You have to write some, at least under Indian laws, idea cannot be copyrighted. You have to give it content. There has to be a body of work under it. Even if I write 2 paragraphs or 3 paragraphs, then I can like register it as a book and get a copyright, and then I have the title. But I sometimes feel that might be overkill, but
Maybe you
I'm just worried. Okay, maybe I should.
just write any paragraph, right? Because you can always change that later. It doesn't have to be the actual final paragraph. You can just write any random paragraph of what future events are possibly going to happen, or just like a synopsis of that book, even from your mind, which of course doesn't have to be concrete, and just maybe register those names.
True. I agree. I should. Or maybe I'll use this video as an evidence later on if someone takes up with this name that, hey, I had said this out before. There's evidence. But, yeah.
It's beautiful like music. Yeah, Mirage of Moonlight is great.
Thank you.
Cool. I mean, did you have any other questions?
Does anybody else have any questions? No. I think. One last small one. Then, if maybe before the marks on the necks, do all the casts have marks on the necks? Because I think the Reisht, as you've described in the book, they have 2 teardrops on their necks, and the Namins have something fire related. Is that like a tattoo or?
So that's a branding which they do. Like it's some form of Vedic baptism of sorts.
Okay.
And honestly, there's no specific location where it needs to be marked, but it as long as it's visible so that the castes can be differentiated. So that's the whole idea behind that. Yeah.
And Permeate had another question. Would you be willing to share your 3 desert island books, and a series would equal 1 book?
Russell Allen books. That's a nice one. Okay. Something which I've already read, right? So I would love to take Lives of Locke Lamora because it's just so funny. I love that. Definitely one Terry Pratchett book because if I'm stuck on the island, I need humor to keep me alive. And maybe some island book which helps me survive on the island, a non-fiction. So, just to like keep myself sane there. But yeah, that's 3. I think that's from the top of my head. Those books came into my head. So yeah.
Continuing on from this
I'm
question,
looking for some new books. I would love to like go for Ken Liu's Dandelion Dynasty. I've
Dynasty.
heard like so much about it. I would love to go for Babel by Josiah. Again, heard so much about that book, and it's so good. And for some cozy reading, Legends and Lattes. Again, I haven't read it, but it looks so nice and cute. So I'd love to have these 3 books because these are the books I haven't read yet, but I really intend to get to them.
We just finished Wall of Storms a couple of weeks ago. That series is really, really good. So
It is, yeah. I intend to go for that. Yeah.
Gaurav, what books are you reading currently?
What books am I reading currently? Hang on. This is because whenever anyone asks me this question, I stumble. Okay, I'm like, wait, am I reading any books? Because I read 3, 4 books at the same time, and I can't remember a single name. It's just a bizarre thing that happens. So I was prepared for this question, and I kept my books here. So I'm reading Brandon Sanders's third book, second part. I'm reading that one right now. I've started Robin Hobb's Mad Ship, and I've started a Gentleman, the League of Republic of Thieves, the third book in.
Okay, Scotland. Yeah.
Yeah, and the 4th book that I'm reading it's called The Sweetness of Water. It's not fantasy related, but it's about like just won a Booker recently, and it's about emancipation process in US. And then I'm reading Tomb of Sand, which is a translated work that won this year's Booker. And the last book which I'm reading is Fifth Element by N.K. Jemisin. I'm just about to like finish it, and the last 100 pages. So
Nice.
I think I read books like I watch Netflix shows. It's like whatever mood strikes me, it's just something I just go for. That's why I take a lot of time to finish books. But once like I'm done reading them, it's just like suddenly all the books are gone, and I'm just so happy that my TBR just got slashed in half. So that's definitely all.
Well, I'll be interested to see how you find Sabetha in that third book of Law, because in the first 2 books, Locke keeps on talking, and like his great love, but she gets introduced in that book. So it'll be fun to hear your thoughts about it, like how you found it to be and how you found the relationship to be as well. Because
for sure, I mean, Arjun is my Sabetha, right? Because I ultimately feature him in the third book, and everyone talks about Arjun a lot of times. So really looking forward to it. Because honestly, the second book, I loved it throughout because it was so much nautical adventure that was involved, but I did not like the ending because there was no foreshadowing. I don't know if you guys have read the book, but
I have.
Something happens with the ball of fire, and that was not. It just happened. It was just introduced in that chapter, and it just kind of ended there. And I did not like that. But nothing to take away from the book. He's brilliant. The way he writes scenes is just kick-ass. So I'm really looking forward to the third book, and I hope it's fun. But I don't think the third book is the conclusion. I always believe
It's a 7-book series, apparently. Originally, I think what he was planning was that his original plan was to write a trilogy. That was going to be books 5, 6, and 7. But then as he started writing book 5, he realized that the backstory was so long. So he went back in time and he wrote basically the first book, which is Lives of Locke Lamora. And he's now, unfortunately, still stuck because of his mental health issues. Last I heard, he's planning to write some short stories. Like he's going to do like a short story or like a novella collection with Subterranean Press, with of stories set in between books 1 and 2 and 2 and 3. So it'll still be interesting. I don't know when that will come out.
Yeah, because I think his strength lies in description of things as such rich and exquisite, like talking about bottles and chairs, and he just describes them so beautifully. I think I'm very envious of that, and I really hope to read more of his books. The other book I was reading is also, by the way, of course, Joe Abercrombie, his Trouble with Peace, the second book in his Madness series. Having a good time with it. So for sure.
I need the 5th season. That's one of the books you're reading, I believe. Right?
Yeah,
I think N.K. Jemisin. She's referring to N.K. Jemisin.
Yeah. I'm reading that book.
Nice. Respect to those of you who can read so many books at one time. I'm a one book at a time kind of person. I'm usually one or two at the most, but
Yeah, we are Casanovas when it comes to books. Sorry if that came off as wrong, but it is what it is. I should really have a filter when I'm putting my thoughts on what I say.
This is good. This is
yeah,
really
that's great. Yeah, you should have that on your bio. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for coming by and talking to us about the book. I really enjoyed it and made me curious to hear more about MBH. So it's going to open up more doors for me.
Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you for having me, and it's been such a brilliant discussion to be able to have a unfiltered conversation. That's why I keep ending up making such amazing quotes because it's really nice to like know that the little seeds that you planted in the book were picked up by the readers, and to just have a discussion on the world that I've created is I'm really passionate about. So as a reader, I've always discussed other books with fellow readers, but to discuss my own book is sort of very liberating and rewarding. So thank you for having me here and giving me this experience, and especially with my fairy godfather. So thank you, Mihir. Sorry, I keep calling it whatever god brother.
It's funny. No, it's funny. It just cracks me up every time I'm just lucky enough to be the one person who, because you mentioned Mahabharat when you sent that email. That was it literally, because and of course this cover. But no, it's this has been a gift to me. So thank you for writing this book. And I'm pretty sure all the others, like all the Indian readers, are going to tell you the same thing, because we never had something like this ever. And so to get this and to have you talk so passionately about the books to come, it's like nirvana.
Thank you, Mihir. Means a lot. Seriously.
And I really hope whoever picks up the book doesn't change the cover, because it is such a beautiful cover.
Beautiful.
Thank you. I'm going to snip this part of the video and send it to my agent. Like, hey, please, because everyone spoke. I think I'm going to be a compilation. Every time I heard a YouTube discussion on the book, people have spoken something about the cover. Just make a compilation and collage of that and send it to my publisher.
We'll even create one for you. So let us know. We'll work on magic.
Yeah. Create a poll on Twitter. But again, thank you so much for having me here, guys.
Yeah, of course, Mihir. Thank you for coming up, for participating. I know it's early for you, so thanks for.
This was amazing. Thank you for having me, Steve, and Gourav. Thank you for basically listening to and answering all my dumb questions. This was really wonderful, and also for the nth time, thank you for writing this book and for hopefully the sequels. We are keeping our fingers crossed that you get picked up by a big-time publisher soon, because I really, really want you to have more and more success. And I'm sure Anita and everybody else will feel the same way, as along with Steve as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and let us, keep us posted on the second book and when we can be expecting it. When we can get our grubby little hands on it, so we can do the same thing for book 2.
Hell yeah.
And so Mihir, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, where's the best place to find you?
Oh, that would be at the Fantasy Book Critic website, which is fantasybookcritic.blogspot.com, where I can also be found on Twitter, which is at fantasybookcrit. And of course on Steve's Spade Chewing forums, which I like to, which there's snow over there, and it's snowing and it's pretty cool. So
yeah, it's snowing. Awesome. And Gourav, where can people find you and keep up to date with your updates for your publishing situation?
Sure. You can find me on Instagram. My handle is @the King Beyond the Wall. No points for guessing I'm a Game of Thrones junkie there. In huge contrast to that name, my Twitter handle is very vanilla. It's Mohanty Gourav number 7. So I think I find a balance there. You can definitely reach me there. I also have a website which I have painstakingly created from YouTube lessons called gauravmohanty.com. So you can go there and check out what YouTube can teach you. So yeah, that's that.
And the website, I was really impressed with it, by the way, now that you mention it, because it looks really nice. So I'm surprised that you kind of watch YouTube videos. It looks like it was professional. So great job on that.
That is so sweet. Thank you. Because I have never had any frustration while writing the book, but when I was creating the website, I'm not kidding. I had a moment where I was like, fuck this, and just left the room. I was like, what is this nonsense? Can't do this. I thought I was one step away from going on Fiverr and engaging someone to create the website. But I thought, I've come halfway. Just let's stick by it.
No, Steve's right. It looks really good. Like,
Mhm.
if you tell me or somebody else, like, this was done by you, this kudos to you, because you did YouTube tutorials and you created it and it looks really well.
Thank you. In my next job application, I can write skills, website building.
Yeah. I can write your book and build your website.
Yes. And come up with amazing quotes like Casanova with the books.
Yeah. Oh, that was great. Yeah, that was good stuff. Well, awesome. Well, thanks everyone for coming by and interacting with us and let us know. And we had one more last question before I sign off. By when are we getting the book to?
I don't know. It's
hardest
all in
question.
the hands of the fates. I'm hoping to finish the book. I was planning to finish it by December end, but December is like wedding season in India, so I have to do and choreograph a lot of dances for all my friends who are getting married. So by January end, I intend to finish it. But I'm really targeting that Dance of Shadows reaches the stores by end of next year, if everything falls according to plan. But it's all in the hands of the fates. So let's see.
Awesome. Yeah, looking forward to it. Keep us posted if you can, and let us know. And no pressure. I always feel guilty whenever I want to get the next book. It's like there's no pressure. Just when it's ready, it's ready. But looking forward to
Absolutely. It. Cheers.
Cool. Well, thanks everyone for coming by and hanging out with us and interacting with us in the chat. And Gourav and Mihir, thank you for taking time and hanging out.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.